Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make this pair of beaded Kumihimo cabochon earrings. And these are mine here that I made. So I chose these cabochons to work with that I wanted to cage where the cabochons still stood out. And so I chose kind of more neutral colours for the beaded Kumihimo sections. They look like that, and that's the back. So we're using just Kumihimo here, and then we have SuperDuos in the braid to help capture the cabochon after we made the braid. So that's what they look like. You can also choose whatever materials that you want to. So if you want to learn how to make these earrings, then keep watching. So it's these materials here that we're going to be using. First of all, we of course need our round Kumihimo just because it's a round braid structure that we're making. And then I'm using this 0.4mm S-lon. It's a nice and strong cord, and it has this dark grey colour. That's going to match lovely with the beads that I'm using for the main part of the braid. But obviously you can match your cord with the beads that you're using. And then those beads are these 80 Miyuki seed beads here. This specific colour is a matte metallic silver grey. Like I said, it's going to match nicely with the cord. And these are the main beads we're using for the braid. And alongside them, also for the braid, we need these SuperDuos. This specific colour is just a jet black. And to then add in afterwards, because the SuperDuos is going to be used to capture the cabochon. But to help with that, we're going to use these 15 Miyuki seed beads as well. And I'm just also using opaque black so it blends in nicely with the SuperDuos. And then we need the cabochons that we want to capture as well. So I have mine here, and these are specifically 2 by 3 centimeter oval shaped cabochons. So a nice size for the earrings. And the specific ones that I'm using are red calcite gemstone ones, but obviously you can choose whatever you want to. And you could even play around with the shape of the cabochons if you want to. You might just have to adjust the length of the braid. Then I'm also using this thread and needle here to help capture the cabochons in place. So I'm using this S-lon size D along with a beading needle, and I'm just using a black colour of the thread to help match the beads, so in case any of the thread shows through, it won't be too obvious. And finally, we need our findings to be able to finish them off. So I have my Kumihimo ends, and then I'm using some jump rings with them to attach to the earring findings that I'm using. You can choose whichever ones you prefer. I'm just using these earring posts and butterfly backs. So let's get all the materials ready, and let's get started. Then we want to cut 4 lengths here of our S-lon cord, that's for the braid, and I have these 4 lengths of about 80 centimeters each. And then what I'm going to do is make sure all the ends are together, then fold them over in half to find where the middle is, so the ends meet there. Then where that midpoint is, I just tied a regular knot and put a piece of scrap wire around that to help pull it down through the disc. Then I added that midpoint there with the piece of wire down through the center of the disc. And you want to distribute the cords out so you have them in opposite pairs like this evenly around the disc. So I put 1 length of cord on each side of the dot there. So your disc now looks like this. And now we want to start the braid for a little bit here. So what I'm going to do is take my top left cord, release it from the slot, bring it down to the bottom here, stay on the left side of the bottom pair. So put it into that slot there. And then I'm going to take the right one from the bottom, bring it up and stay on the right side, and then we've now moved 2 of the cords. Then I'm going to turn my disc to the next pair, and then take the top left one again, bring that down, and then the bottom right one and bring that up. And then we turn the disc again for the next pair, and continue to turn in this direction here. So we always pretty much turn it a quarter to reach that next pair. Bring the top left one down, and then the bottom right one up. And you just want to continue like this until we have about 1 to 2 centimeters of braid. So now I have that little end of the braid there, you can see starting to form on the back of the disc. Then we need to start adding in our beads. So I then added my beads onto all the lengths of cord here. You can see this is what it looks like. So as you can see here, we have 4 of the lengths have SuperDuos on them, mixed with the 80s, but then the other 4 have only got 80s on them. So starting with the top left cord here, we start out with 4 80s, and then we go into the pattern of 1 SuperDuo, 3 80s, 1 SuperDuo, 3 80s, continue like that until we have 6 SuperDuos with the 3 80s in between each one, and then we also finish on the 4 80s there. Now on the right cord of the 2 top ones, we only have 28 80s, so only the 80s go onto that one. And then moving on to the right side of the disc, the top one on the right side also have 28 80s, and then the bottom one of those 2, we start with 3 80s and then 1 SuperDuo, 3 80s, 1 SuperDuo, again that same pattern, and then with 6 SuperDuos with the 3 80s in between, but here we finish on 4 8/0s again. And then to the right one on the bottom of the disc, we start with 2 8/0s, and then we have 1 SuperDuo, 3 8/0s, 1 SuperDuo. Again, continue the pattern. On this one here now, we have 7 SuperDuos in total with the 3 8/0s in between, and we then finish on the 2 8/0s again as well. And on the left one here, we just have the 28 8/0s by themselves. And now to the left side of the disc, we start out with the cord that has 28 of the 8/0s on it. And then the final one, we start with 1 8/0 and then go into the pattern of 1 SuperDuo, 3 8/0s, 1 SuperDuo, and so on. And again on this one, we have 7 SuperDuos in total with those 3 8/0s in between. And then here we finish on 2 8/0s at the end. Now I made this setup to fit the way that I work with my disc. So I take the top left one first and then the bottom right one and bring that up. So if you start with either the top left one or the bottom right one, because they're the same as each other, you can just set it up in the exact same way that I've done here. But if you start with the top right one or the bottom left one, you'll need to set it up a bit differently, and that is the mirrored image to this. So imagine you have a mirror in front of it, your disc here, and then you want to set your beads up in that mirrored image. So that means that basically it'll all be opposite. So the 2 top ones would swap place, not the cords themselves, but just the beads. And then the side lengths here, the beads rather, would swap over the middle. So the top one on each side, the position of the bead will swap with each other, and the same one with the bottom ones. And then on the bottom here of the disc, they also would just swap with each other. Again, the positioning of the beads. So when you then added all the beads here, it's time to start adding them into the braid. So now I'll pick the disc back up here, and then what we're going to do is continue with the braid. So I'm just going to release the top left cord, the same that I've been doing throughout. But as I'm releasing that, I'm also letting 1 bead drop down the length of the cord in towards the middle of the disc. And then what you want to make sure to do is, as you're moving this cord below to the bottom of the disc, you want to make sure that bead stays underneath the cord that's going out towards the side, so it gets tucked in underneath there. So it might fall all the way in by itself, but you might just have to tuck it in with your finger. Just keep an eye on that and make sure that they stay underneath the cords in the middle. Now I'm going to release the bottom right one, let 1 bead drop down, make sure it stays underneath, and then bring it to the top. And that's all there really is to it. Turn into the next pair, and then releasing 1 bead and let it drop down the cord as I'm releasing that cord as well into the middle, tuck it under, and you just continue like this. So I just wanted to show you adding in a SuperDuo as well. So I've continued for a bit here until I'm reaching the point where I gotta add in the first one. So just bring the top left one first, and this has just got an 8/0 on. Let it drop all the way down there. Make sure it tucks underneath that cord going up to the side. And then on the bottom here, I have my first SuperDuo. So I'm just doing the same thing, releasing the cord and letting the bead drop down into the middle. And then you'll probably find that this happens naturally. You have the 2 holes in the bead, and the cord is going through one of them. So you'll find that the hole where the cord is going through is kind of towards the inside of the braid, and then the other hole that's open is sticking out and away from the braid, and that's exactly what you want. So it'll probably do that naturally when you add in the bead, but just keep an eye on it to make sure that that does happen. Otherwise you just continue, because obviously it's the SuperDuo sticking out of the braid that we then need to use to capture the cabochon. But then otherwise continue like this, the exact same way, until you used up all of the beads and the lengths of cord. So now that I've run out of beads here, you can see I haven't got any left on the cords. Then we just need to make a bit of braid at the end with just the cord, just like we did in the beginning, that little section there. So all we're going to do is continue the same braid. Now we're just not adding in any more beads whenever we move the cord. So again, just do this for about 1 to 2 centimeters. So then I want to get my braid off the disc now, but what I just want to do is secure the ends of the cord so it doesn't come undone once we start taking it off. And what I'm going to do is take the pair that I was due to take next, so not the one that I just used, and then I'm going to take cords diagonally opposite each other from that pair. So these 2 here, bring them across the middle, and then tie a knot, and then tighten that right down at the end of the braid. Then take the other 2 cords from that same pair and do the same thing. Make that knot and tighten that down at the end of the braid, basically right on top of the first knot. You can always just retighten it a bit because it's just single knots, so they will come undone from moving it around too much. Then I'm going to move to the other pair. Again, take cords diagonally opposite each other and tighten that knot. And then the final cords, do the exact same thing. Make your knot and tighten that down on the end, but then because this is the last two cords, the last knot that I'm just doing a double knot with that, just because, like I said, single knots, they tend to come undone more easily, and this is going to then hold all of it in place nicely. So there we go. Now I can take my disc away, and then here we have the braid. So we have the 8/0 seed beads going all the way around the braid, you can see. And then we have the SuperDuos just sitting in these two rows next to each other. They're not quite on opposite sides, but they're more towards the same side with a bit of spacing in between, because this is then where the cabochon is going to sit, obviously with this wrapping around. So what I just want to do is prepare the ends as well, finish them off. So here I'm just going to remove the wire. On here I'm just going to add a bit of glue around where all the cords are coming out and cut off the excess. And then you'll have the braid ready for the next step. So what I just want to do now here with the braid is show you what we're going to be doing. So the purpose is, like I said, these SuperDuos are going to be what's capturing the cabochon. So I'm just going to bring that in and show you how it's going to be sitting before we then start moving on to obviously doing it and making it secure in place. So the braid is going to be going around the cabochon like this, with one row of the SuperDuos on the front and one row on the back. Then obviously we're going to need to add some to this to make sure it stays in this shape and also holds the cabochon in place. So that's what we're going to be doing now. So to do that, we then need to prepare some thread as well. So taking a length and put that onto my beading needle. And I'm just working with about an arm length because it's just an earring that we're making. So it doesn't need to be too long, but we're going around several times. So we do need a bit of a length to work with. And I put a decent tail through the needle there. Makes it a bit shorter and easier to work with. And then on the other end, I've just tied a knot. And make sure to cut off the little tail, because that's going to then be a stopper, so we don't just pull the thread right through the braid. So again, I want to get my braid, because what we need to do is to attach this thread onto one of the ends. So I'm just starting on an end where we just have the cord, and then first of all I'm going to be going through with my needle, pulling the thread all the way through, and then as you can see there, that knot that we added in is a stopper, so it doesn't go all the way through, but actually stays in the braid. And then first of all, before I move on, I'm just going to go back and forth through the braid like this. So just moving a bit to the side, go in the opposite direction, pull it all the way through, and then go through again in the opposite direction. And this is just really to help secure the thread in place. So we can obviously move on to get down to the beaded section and then also add in more beads. And when it's then secure in there, then what we need to do is start moving our way down towards the beads. And I'm just going to do that by going into the braid again, but then going down through pretty much the center of the braid and have the needle come out right where the beads start. It's just so we don't have too much of the thread showing, in case we could see it anywhere. So it's really just to hide it. And obviously it just makes it a bit more secure as well. Pulling it all the way through. And then when I'm here by the beads, what we now need to do is get to that very first SuperDuo. So I'm just starting on this upper side, but what I'm going to do is go through the braid back and forth again. You can also go through the beads and follow a path there. That's completely up to you how you prefer, but I'm just going to be going back and forth through the braid. So I'll move a little bit to the side between some beads and then go straight through the braid like this, as you can see, to the other side. Again, come between the beads, don't go through any of the beads, and pull it through. And this is really just to work our way down towards the SuperDuo. Make sure when you're pulling this that you just pull it tight enough that you hear a little snap, or you can feel a little snap. Obviously not so it breaks, but just so you can see or feel that thread go in between the beads there, because that hides it nicely as well. Then move a little bit to the side and then come through to the opposite side again. And you can always guide your needle to where you want it to go. So I'm just gonna keep adjusting it until it's coming out in the place where I want it to. And keep going back and forth here. Make sure I pull that so I can't see the thread, so it's not left loose on the outside of the braid or anything. That's the most important thing. And then move a little bit, go to the opposite side again, and now I'm getting to the point where I'm almost at the SuperDuo. So probably one more pass will do it. So go through, move a bit, and then what I'm going to make sure to do is come out. If we look at it, looking at it from the bottom here, in this direction, so it's the first SuperDuo, what I need to do is come out right on top of it or right above it. So not on the bottom side when we're looking at the first one, but on the top side of it. Again, just go through. You can see right there, it's coming out right in front of it. And pull all that through again, all the way. And make sure that's pulled in, because now what we need to do is actually start using the SuperDuos. So first of all, we need to go through the inner hole in the SuperDuo, because we need to get to the outer one. But this is the inner hole that has the cord running through it, that's attached to the braid. So I need to go through that from the direction where the thread is coming out right in front of it. So go right through towards the end of the braid here. Pull it all the way, so we then now need to go to the outer hole by coming back on ourselves in the opposite direction, and that way hides the thread nicely as well. And that one is just a little bit blocked, so just need to open it. There we go, and pull that all the way through. So just like that. So we now have our thread ready in that very first SuperDuo in the outer hole, because obviously that's where we need to go now, all the way along the row in the outer holes of the SuperDuos, and the thread is nicely hidden as well. So that's now in the place where we're at. So we now need to start adding in some more beads. So I'm then just getting some of my 15-0 seed beads ready and just pouring them out here. So then to add in those beads here, what we need to do is bridge the gaps between the SuperDuos. So here, first of all, obviously we need to take into account that this is going to curve around, so it's going to actually make the gaps a bit smaller than if it was straight. So what I'm going to do is add almost the same amount of beads between them all the way around, except for a few. So I'm going to add 4 of my beads in the first gap, and then go straight through the next SuperDuo in the outer hole again that hasn't been used, and then we add the next few beads. Again, it's 4 on this one, so it's 4 seed beads for most of the gaps. And double check that you have the right amount. Go through the next SuperDuo. Now as we're doing this, we're going around the first time, don't worry about pulling it tight or anything, just get the beads in place, because we're going to be pulling it tight later on, and we can always do that when we've gotten all the way around. The third one, also 4. And the next 2 beads, I'm adding 4 again. Going through the next SuperDuo. So you can see this is pretty simple, just going through the outer holes that haven't been used in the SuperDuo, and you can just see when I'm pulling it, it's wanting to curve because we added a bit less spacing between them, so it makes it want to curve naturally, which is great for the setting around the stone. And the next one here, and then I just got to double check because we're now getting more towards the middle. We've got to find the middle SuperDuo. So that is that one, the next one. So now I actually need to change the amount, because this is the middle SuperDuo right there. So we have the same amount on either side, and that middle one, these 2 gaps on either side of that middle one are going to be a bit different. Down here we're going to add just 3 instead of 4. So add 3, one just went off there, add the 3, go to the next SuperDuo, and then add 3 on the other side of that same SuperDuo. Just like that. And now we just pass the midpoint. Again, if I pull it tight, you can see it's wanting to curve nicely. So now what we just want to do is go back to using 4, because we just want to make the other side the mirrored image, since that is the mid one. So just add 4 between the rest of them as well until you reach that very last SuperDuo. So now I got all the way around here, reaching that last SuperDuo like I said. And then again, you can see if I pull it tight, we get this more natural curve. It's going to end up fitting really nicely with the cabochon. But what we then need to do is bridge the gap from the last one to the first one again. So here I also then need to bring in another SuperDuo. So what I'm going to do is then add, this is basically going to replicate the very bottom, the very middle of the braid. So I'm going to add 3 of my seed beads first of all. Then I'm going to add my SuperDuo just through one of the holes. And then another 3 of the seed beads. So I have the SuperDuo in the middle with 3 seed beads on either side. And then I'm going to go straight through the first SuperDuo in that outer hole. And then also you can straight away, as many as you can get through, basically go through SuperDuo, all the beads, the SuperDuos and beads, just as far as you can really. Make sure you catch all those seed beads. You're going through them all, because otherwise you're going to have one that's, if you missed one, it's going to kind of be pushed out a bit. And then what I'm going to do is pull this. Just got a little knot, I think. Yep. Just need to undo that. There we go. Always love getting them knots. And then when I pull this tight again, obviously I have some more to do, but just to show you, pull this tight, that's going to then bridge that gap nicely and sit right there on top, and that's going to replicate the bottom part of it. So now what you want to do is continue going through all these beads again that we added in and the SuperDuos to the other side, and again go through those extra ones in the middle up there that you added as well. So you come out on that first side again. So I've made it all the way around now. You can see I'm coming out just before that first SuperDuo again. So this is also the point where you want to make sure you start pulling it tight. So as you're going through, pull it tight so it gets this shape of the cabochon. And then when we're coming out of these beads here that we added in extra and the SuperDuo, what I'm going to go do is go through the first SuperDuo again in the outer hole, but only the SuperDuo, so make sure you avoid the little seed beads on the other side of it. Keeps wanting to catch the first one. There we go. Push that all the way through and then pull the thread through as well. Just make sure I don't get tangled up and get caught on all the beads. So like that, and just really make sure you pull that tight so you get this nice shape, and it pretty much stays in place now. But obviously we need to secure it some more. So now what we need to do is make our way back towards the braid and towards the end again. So I'm going to go through the bottom hole in this SuperDuo, just like before, to make sure we then get down towards the braid. It's just to have as little thread showing as possible. Then once you get through that, we'll want to make our way up towards the end of the braid. But we want to get to this bead right here. So this for me is going to be the back. It doesn't really matter what's the front and the back, but I'm going to go through the braid back and forth like I showed you before after I've gone through that SuperDuo, and then get to this bead right here. So come out right in front of it, or right below it rather, depending how you look at it. So as you can see there, I'm getting my thread out just underneath that bead that's in the braid, so the one that's furthest towards the top, one of the first ones that we added in, but then also quite close to the inside there. So we need these two ends of the braid now to meet up, and we need to connect them as well. So what we need to do as well is also get some more beads ready. So we just need a few more of the actual ADOs that we use to make the braid with, because that's what we're going to use to connect them, obviously to make it nice and seamless as well. So I'm then going to take my needle again here, because what we need to do is get the thread through that bead in the braid. So it's coming out underneath it, so I'm just going to go straight through it with my needle, because now we're going to start a little bit of beading here to get the two sides connected. Bring it all the way through, so we have the thread coming through the bead and it's ready. And then I want to add one of the ADOs, and then I want to go through the same bead again that's in the braid in the same direction, pull it all the way through so that when it's pulled tight, the bead will sit right next to it like this. So basically just stack next to it side by side. Now if it doesn't do this automatically, make sure you have it sit like this and then pull it tight so then it will stay. So that's one bead added in, and then I need to come down through the bead that we added just like this, You can put your finger on to make sure to kind of hold it so it doesn't get all loose. Just gotta make sure I don't get tangled up as well on the ends of the braid with the thread, just like that, and pull it nicely. And then we need to connect that bead to the opposite side. So we're just adding that one there, and then gonna go through the bead on that side, basically opposite to where we started out. So just the one that fits nicely. And again, because I'm coming from the top towards the bottom through that bead we're coming out from, we need to go from the bottom towards the top in the next one. It's just as if we're adding in a new one, a loose one, except this is just already in the braid. But it's the same principle. And then pull that through. And then when we pull that, it's going to pull those two closer together, but it's just one side, the bottom side connected, so we need to go back through the middle bead again. The new one that we added from the top. Just pulling it all through here. So you can see there. So then I put my finger on it and just pull it. It's going to pull them closer. So we're going to have that nice connection point in there. And it's going to seem really nice and seamless as well, especially when we complete it fully. And also incorporate this loose SuperDuos still. But for now, what I want to do is actually go through this, follow the path that I've just done a few times, because we need to make this a bit tighter. So you can really go whatever direction you want. You can go back to the opposite side, go through that. As long as you keep following the same thread path here between these three beads. Because the aim is then also to get them a bit tighter and make them stay that way. So it's obviously going to get easier to work with, but also it needs to sit that way when it's complete. And it's only going to help getting there now. I just have a little knot there. So just got to undo that. And then I can pull it tight. You can see it's a bit loose there, but just make sure to pull it tight every single time you go through, so you don't end up with any loose thread. So go through this, basically a figure of 8 is what we're doing, between those three beads, and make sure that it's nice and secure. So then what I want to do is get to the point here in the middle where I'm going to connect the SuperDuos as well, the one that's still loose. So I'm just going to go down through that middle 8-0 again to get to it. And then what I'm going to do is add in another 8-0, and I'm going to go through, if we're just looking at it here, looking at the piece like this, so the SuperDuos at the top, then I'm coming down through that bead in the middle, but then I need to go through that SuperDuo from the left towards the right, and bring it all the way out. So it's going to sit right there, and then on the other side, I need to add another one. And then go through the other bead on top here with the one that's in the braid. And just pull it all the way. And there we then have the SuperDuo connected as well. So just can adjust how these sit, because I like them to sit at a bit of an angle. Something a bit like that. Then what we need to do now is secure it a little bit more, because obviously it's still a bit loose and we want to have multiple threads going through wherever, same as we did down here, to just make it more secure and stronger long term. So it's a matter of taking your thread here with the needle obviously through the beads, basically following the path you've already done. So right now my thread is coming out on the right side here in that top bead in the braid. So what I'm going to do is go back through this area again, and you want to make sure you capture that SuperDuo, go through it at least twice in total, if not a few more times, and then again connect this mid part to the sides of the braids as well, just so we strengthen this whole area. So just go through it several times in whatever path that you really can find will work for the piece. So this is the one side completely done now, and if we just take the cabochon, I'll show you how it's going to look. And like I said, I'm just putting my back towards this, the back of the cabochon. It's going to look like this from the back. Capture it just perfectly around there so it's not going to fall out. And then on the other side, you can see it fits perfectly in there within the shape of that braid. So now what we need to do is move from the back where we are, the thread is coming out here, towards the front side of the cabochon, and then obviously capture in using the other SuperDuos in the braid that we haven't used yet. And I'm going to do that by grabbing my needle again, and then right where I'm coming out from in the braid or within the beads, I need to go through the braid to the opposite side, just like I showed you before, without going through the actual beads, but just through the middle of the braid. And then basically we're on the other side now, where we need to work. Pull it all the way through. Again, make sure the thread gets pulled in between the beads. But you can obviously see we're not quite in the right place yet. So what we need to do is go back and forth through the braid like I showed you before, until we then reach down right on the bottom side of the first SuperDuo there. So basically it's the exact same thing as I showed you over here on the back side, or the first side. We need to go back and forth through the braid, come out right below that SuperDuo to go through the bottom hole that's already in the braid to the opposite side, and then go through the outer hole like this in the opposite direction than the first hole to come downwards to be able to go through the rest of the SuperDuos in the braid as well. And then we need to bridge the gaps between them by adding the exact same amount of beads as we did on the back. So that's why it doesn't really matter whether it's the front or the back that you work on first or second. It's just really personal preference. So do that, fill in all the beads, so 4 all the way until you reach either side of that middle SuperDuo on the bottom, and then 4 again for the rest of it. Remember to bridge the gap up here, where you add 3 seed beads with that SuperDuo in the middle, and then go through it all one more time to give it that extra security. And then when you've done that, then obviously we'll need to add in the cabochon before we completely tighten it. So now I added all the beads here between the SuperDuos, and I went around an extra time for that extra strength. Then before we tighten this, we don't need to bring in the cabochon, because obviously it's going to get captured. So if we tighten this now, we kind of forgot to add in the cabochon. So put that in there, whatever direction you want it facing. Make sure it's in there nicely. It's laying as exactly the shape that you want it to have. So like that. And then what we need to do is start tightening this. So I'm going to keep holding my thread, and then I'm also using my fingers to help the SuperDuos along and the seed beads. So while you're kind of pulling at this, obviously be careful that you don't pull so hard that the thread breaks or anything. But as long as you're using a pretty strong thread. But that's why I also help with your fingers to push the SuperDuos in to tighten around the cabochon. You can see we're gradually going to get it more and more. However you need to hold it. And then make sure you don't ideally have any thread showing anywhere. So up here I know I want to tighten it a bit more because there's still some thread showing. So just kind of mold it around the cabochon a bit. So just like that. Then it's going to look a little something like that here. But obviously now we have to fasten it. So to do that, really what you want to do is the same as before. But now you just want to make sure that you keep the cabochon in there when doing it, and you keep the tightness on this. So what we're going to do is take the needle. I'm already coming out of that SuperDuo, the first one in the upper hole, outer hole. So what we need to do is go down through the inner hole in the opposite direction, the one that's in the braid, and then just go through the braid a few times to kind of fasten this in place so we can stop worrying about it loosening up again while we're moving it around. So fasten it like that, and then once you've done that, what we need to do is this exact same as we did on the back up here. So get to the top, add that extra bead in first of all, so the extra 8/0s, connect the 2 sides, and then connect from them down to that loose SuperDuo that we have left, SuperDuo, the one that's kind of flip-flopping here. So just in that upper hole, connect that as well, and then otherwise just go through it several times to make it nice and secure. And once you've done that, get your thread back to one of the ends of the braid, because then all we need to do really that's left before we then need to finish off the ends as well is to get rid of the excess thread. So once you secure the whole thing in place, then what we want to do is move our way towards one of the ends again where it's just the cord. So I've got to that side over here through the beads at the top and through the braid, and then I'm just making my way through the cord itself. Sometimes it would just be handy to use a pair of chain nose pliers here to help pull it through if you need to, the needle. You can get a bit of grip and just go through here, and then what I'm doing is making my way to the outer edge of the braid, basically where we started out, because I want to finish it off there, the thread, so it's hiding nicely, because this is going to, the actual end of the braid with the cord is going to be hidden inside of the Kumihimo end. So just pulling it through, and then to finish it off, what I'm going to do first of all is go through it a few times, like that, and then we want to start tying a few knots as well, just to make sure the cord, or the thread rather, is nice and secure. So I'm just going through like this and pull it through, but then before pulling it all the way through, I'm making sure I leave a bit of a loop, so a little something like that, and then I'm going to take my needle and go through that loop before pulling the thread all the way tight, and I'm going to go through it twice, and then once I'm through it, then I can pull it, and that's going to pull the thread tight but also that loop in, and that then creates a knot around that loop with the thread. So I'm going to do that a few times, go back and forth, make a couple of knots, and then once you've made your last knot, make sure to go through the braid a few times again so you don't cut off the thread right after you've made a knot, but then get rid of the excess, and then all that's left to do really is add the Kumihimo end to this, because the piece itself really is done now. So I already have a tutorial where I show how to finish off Kumihimo ends on bracelets, but it's the exact same principle. So I'm going to use this here and some glue, add glue to the inside and the ends, and then just put this on top, obviously after I got rid of the thread, making sure that the loops there sit straight, just so we can easily attach a jump ring so it's going to hang nicely, and let it dry. And then once it's fully dry, then it'll be done and you can add your earring findings without worrying about this coming off. So that's all that's really left to do to finish it off. And obviously you want to make the other one the same so you have a full pair. So now the earrings are complete here, and they look like this. So obviously this is just with the materials that I've used. You can make them look completely different depending what cabochon and what beads you're using for the Kumihimo, but then they're captured nicely like that. So they look the same. Obviously there's a back to the cabochon itself, but otherwise that's what it looks like. We're going to hang nicely from the ear and dangle like that and give a really nice look outward. So this size I think would also be perfect for a pendant. If you prefer the pendants you wear to not be too large, this will work just perfectly. Obviously you can just put it on a chain or make a different closure. I have made some other tutorials where I've made pendants, so you could just adjust that to say the different size cabochon. That's completely up to you, but that's a finished pair of earrings. So I really hope that you did enjoy this tutorial here. Please do let me know what you think, and thank you very much for watching.